1 minute to the deadline. Seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Deadline.
Greetings, and thank you for joining me for this supplemental coverage of the 2025 Virtual Diplomacy Championship preliminary rounds. We covered most of the games last weekend, but we missed a few. So we're going to cover those tonight before we get to the top board coverage coming up later tonight on DBN. So without further ado, I would like to get to the games with my colleagues, Johnny Gillum and Karthik Conant.
All right, I'm going to nominate Karthik to start us off because he's bragged that he can do whole season reads in less than 35 seconds, and I want to see it.
Sure.
So, Karthik, this is round 2, board B. Let's see it.
Absolutely. So in the West, we have a relatively standard opening. But the most thing I want to call attention to is Sean Halsey opening to Picardy, showing a relatively pro-German opening here, not opening towards Burgundy. We have the English going to Yorkshire, not to Edinburgh. But Jackson Roberts opens to St. Petersburg. This is going to be hugely anti-English, and I think will spell the demise for Milo. I expect an FGR in the north. In the south, we see Vienna, DMZ, and Galicia. Going to be huge and allows Jackson Roberts to get exactly what he wants to in the north. While we have the bounce in the Black Sea, Constantinople goes to Bulgaria, while Venice goes to Tyrolia. I expect a strong Austrian-Russian relationship, a strong FG, and the rest, I think, will be history. Let's go on to the fall.
1 minute 2, not even close.
It started late. So
go.
In the West, we see France port Germany into Belgium as expected. We see the Italians take Munich, but that's fine. With the Germans getting 3 build, they can handle that with ease. In the South, we see the Turkish shuffle their units on cargo to Constantinople. We see Pulling convoy to Tunis, and we see the Sevastopol unit take Romania with the fleet. RAT, let's see.
And check out Albania trying to convoy Apulia to Greece, but Apulia goes to Tunis instead.
Very, very curious. Mm-hmm. Maybe the Austrians wanted a stab, but RAT, they're forced into.
Right.
Army Trieste, yeah, like they didn't have a choice. Like, it's their only option. And then the Fleet Kiel, I want to call attention to. That's probably the most important build here, along with Fleet Brest. It's all over for the English at this point. Is it an invalid build at Warsaw?
It's Jackson
Roberts.
It's Jackson.
You know better than that.
He knows which one's going to get built and which one isn't. It's just
true,
cute.
True. Cheeky.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's go on to the spring. And as I said, it's sayonara to the English. Norway falls. Christian and Jackson are working a perfect tandem here. And Sean Halsey also working with them to take out Milo. In the South, Venice goes up to Tyrolia while Kiel shuffles. Munich can actually be held this year so long as Austria doesn't interfere. RIT working a perfect tandem in theory. Ukraine shuffling to Romania could pose the demise for Russia. And the balance in Greece is what I think will be determinative. Roger Yu is in big trouble. The Italians may be sneaking out the Austrian support. So Austrian spot for an RIT. Let's go to the fall. And yet, despite me saying that maybe the Italians are going to steal the Austrian spot, instead the Italians support the Austrians into Greece, blocking the support of the convoy there by the Turks, while the French and the Germans support themselves into Munich, and the Italians voluntarily walk out. While the Italians could have withstood the Germans alone, they cannot withstand the FG. And with the Russians, the Germans, and the French working together against the England, the FG are very, very strongly paced. Ukraine seeking into Galicia, I'm curious to see if that's pro-Austrian or pro-Italian. Very, very important to see what's happening there. And now we're into the winter. We see Fleet Marseille get built. Huge. Other than that, no real important builds other than the Skagerrak getting pulled. Let's move into spring. So now I want to call attention to the move to Adriatic. I think it signals the Italians wanting to go full on against the Austrians and saying, hey, I recognize I'm in trouble. I cannot fight the Turks. I cannot fight the Russians. AI against RT here is a losing battle if FG is working with them. Therefore, I'm sorry, Roger, you're getting cut out. I think it's probably the smart play for them. It sucks for Roger, but like, what else are you going to do here? They're getting pressured by the French. No real choice. The English are trying to cover, but with a guaranteed convoy to Clyde and the force of the North Sea, like, it's just fait accompli here. The English are dead. In the meanwhile, as I said, with the move to Galicia, it was either going against the Italians with supporting the Austrians or getting hard against the Austrians. Here it's hard against the Austrians. Budapest gets pummeled. With Vienna getting cut, very little could be done. Either Budapest or Greece is falling here, and the Austrians choose to let Budapest fall instead of letting Greece fall. So kudos to Jackson there. Now we see the complete destruction of the English. We see Liverpool fall. We see Edinburgh fall, leaving the English to make a last stand in London. In the meanwhile, the Russians support the Italians into Vienna, while Budapest is held. And finally, the Turkish convoy into Greece makes it in. So the Austrians lose Vienna, Budapest, and Greece in a single year, showing the incredible power of Russia, Italy, and Turkey collaborating, and the incredible power of France, Germany, and Russia collaborating. England and Austria, not long for this world. Let's go on to...
One word answer to this question, Karthik. Who do you like best from this position? One word.
Russia.
Carry on.
My wayward son. So the Russians build 2 in theory, but they wave. I love the wave. Moscow commits them to nothing, and it gives them a built-in pocket. They can do whatever they want in. This lets Jackson do whatever he wants diplomatically and spin the webs he needs to. In the south, Nicholas built an army, which is probably what Jackson wants. Makes him forced to go against the Austrians and locks him a little bit against the Italians. So this is a really strong position for Jackson to negotiate from, so long as he can keep things locked the way they are. Let's go into the spring. And here we see something interesting. Jackson supports the North Sea to hold, but supports... Oh, no, he's supporting the English against the Germans. So this may be a range trying to bait them into a hopeless position and allow Yorkshire to support the North Sea to London. Sorry, no. This is just a masterful play, actually. This guarantees that Milo falls. This is a clever outplay that ensures Edinburgh has no defense and everything is done for. Kudos to Jackson for working this out. In the south, we see a repositioning by the Turks as Serbia gets forced. The Russians say the Italians no longer matter, and they take Vienna for themselves. So we see a juggernaut, while the Russians have friendly alliances with the French and the Germans, seemingly. So in order for the Russians to get stopped, the French and the Germans need to stick together, and the French need to come over the top. But at the same time, that means that the French cannot go under the bottom as heavily to deal with the Turks. So the French are really stuck in a pivotal position, and no answer is the right one so long as RT sticks together and works optimally. And that's the real danger you have here. And I'm curious to see how they work this out. And that's why I picked Jackson to win, because any mistake gives Jackson the win here. Go to the fall. Okay. And as we see here, the Russians get Edinburgh, and London is guaranteed, basically. And instead of the FG units flowing north, as I mentioned, in order to check Jackson, Jackson does the diplomatic work necessary to get the French to go south. This is massive. This means that there's little check towards Jackson in the north. Jackson will get 2 builds here. If he gets one more fleet in the north, he can stop Christian Brown from creating a real check against him. And if Christian Brown says, hey, I can get no real builds off of Russia, he's forced to go after France, because there's nothing he can do really against the south. There's nothing he can do in the north other than go after France. And this is how you win a diplomacy game if you're Russia. In the south, Turkey is making some good positional moves to get a build off of Serbia, get in position to take Trieste if Russia is willing to do so. But this is once again more of Jackson saying, hey, let me help my allies succeed positionally so that I can say Turkey is a threat. But in realistic chances, there's no way to destabilize Russia from a board top unless things drastically change, and Russia's doing what's necessary to prevent things from drastically changing. Let's go to the next year. It's spring. Builds here won't matter too much. Jackson's getting cute again, fake building.
He always does this. It's a Jackson special.
I love you, Jackson. And as I said, he can build in the north, and I love the army builds here because this reminds me of what I did in EDC, right? Would have been better for him to build the fleets here? Tactically, yes. But building the army says diplomatically, hey, I'm not attacking Christian. If you want to attack me, be my guest, but I will stop you. And now we have 2-on-2 here in Skagerrak and versus Sweden. And so long as Jackson can prevent him from entering Sweden, it makes it almost impossible for Christian Brown to enter the Baltic without getting a new build. And while I think some tactical mistakes and an errant stab on Turkey here will cause him to lose Vienna, there is still a way for Jackson Roberts to recover if he does so smartly. But Nicholas Lawton, well timing the stab, could prove to be Jackson's downfall. And this is what I was talking about here, right? So we have Jackson Roberts' ill-timed stab. So Serbia falls guaranteed, and Budapest tries to make the moves necessary to retake Trieste, but Albania stops it. And at the same time, this allows a convoy to happen into Sweden, basically because Jackson was forced into a guess, right? If Norway supported Finland to Sweden here, everything... No. Norway was guaranteed. Yes. Unless Finland... Yes, Norway was guaranteed.
Yeah, Christian was guaranteed to get one of them this way.
Yeah. So, unfortunate, positioning for him. If he had the fleet still in Norwegian, things would have been different. But kudos to Jackson Roberts because he gets Sean Halsey to turn around. If Sean keeps the pressure on, Jackson is doomed, right? But he's able to sell to Sean that, hey, Christian Brown is taking Norway off of me. He's taking Vienna off of me. Let's look elsewhere and see if, a deal can be made. And I think him getting into Black Sea while doing everything else may allow him to survive here. Let's go into the winter. So as you can see, Jackson is still on 8. Now he's tied with Germany, right? And the French are in Munich. If he can sell this to Sean correctly, Germany is forced to go full gung-ho against the French, allowing Russia to take back Norway, because Christian Brown can't say no to letting Russia take it back. And Vienna really can't be defended. And all these things are pointing back now to Nicholas being forced to go one-on-one against Russia. And I think at best, we're looking at a stalemate in the long term here. And at worst, a losing position, while Italy is able to sort of regrow and re-expand as France goes against Germany. So really, really well played by Jackson. Let's go to the spring. And as we see here, France walks into Berlin into a position where they can get kicked out of. We see Germany take back Munich. We see the Germans working with Russia once again. As expected, the Turks are able to force Russia out of the Black Sea, but this takes a turn. And in that turn, we're able to see the French be forced out of Tyrrhenian Sea despite tapping Naples. We see the French tapping Venice. So the French are no longer going to be a threat to the Italians, giving the Italians the space needed to sort of deal with the Janissary Austrians and the Turkish threat, while the Russians pose the dominant threat to the Turks. And in the north, we see the Russians taking Liverpool from the French and presumably using the Germans as a Janissary. At this point, I don't see how the Russians lose this game. If we go to the next turn into the fall, we see exactly what you would want the Russian turn to look like, right? We see the Germans get convoyed through the Baltic, the Russian fleet in the Baltic, mind you, to kick out the French. The French make it into Prussia. Sure, yippee-ki-yay. But,
Yeah.
I mean, there's the Russian army in Galicia that ensures it's going to be a meaningless threat in the long run. And while the Turks get into Trieste, which is a problem, the Russians getting a build off of Liverpool, the French not taking London, the Germans convoying into position to make aggressive moves on the French, and the Italians not losing ground to AT is really catastrophic to the French. So once again, great moves by Jackson, good moves by Christian as well to handle the position that they've been dealt with. Let's go on to the winter. And as we see, -2 for the French, +1 for the Turks and the Russians and the Germans. Germans have everything occupied, so no matter. Now that we're in the spring, we see a repositioning of the Russians, giving the Germans a space to kind of do what they need to do. Smart tactical play by them. Christian and Jackson are tied on 9 apiece. And I'm curious to see how this repositioning changes sort of the board state that we're looking with here. Let's go to the fall. And now we see a movement towards Sweden and St. Petersburg. This allows Norway to be taken if need be. We see the Germans take London. Now, this is important to note that if France wants it, they can force London here. They chose not to. I'm curious why that is, especially since they try to bounce out Burgundy while allowing Paris to be taken. Very curious choice.
France is trying to get, for a couple of turns now, has been trying to get Germany on board with a Stop Jackson alliance.
Absolutely.
Christian says, I don't care.
Right, exactly. Christian Brown's spurn is a problem for France to deal with.
Yeah.
And that's why you want to work with Christian. Christian is a
Right.
good ally if he's on side. When you spurn him, I mean, danger is coming your way. So kudos to Christian Brown for making that quite clear. So now we come into winter 1907, and Christian Brown is building 2, right? France is down 1. Turkey's down 1. Oh, no, sorry. Turkey's +1. Who's down 1 there? Oh, Austria's down.
Thanks for playing, Roger.
Thanks for playing, Robert. Sorry, Roger. You had a good run. I mean, 1907 is Austria against an RIT in theory in the early game. Very, very impressive that you survived this long. So, and now we see sort of like, Norway fall as expected. Christian Brown can't say no. You have the honorary bounce in the Baltic Sea. We don't see any tomfoolery with Denmark sneaking in and Sweden being allowed into the Baltic Sea or whatever. And in theory, like, Turkey's being kept honest here with all the moves being ordered. But in reality, this is all but ensuring that Russia ends up on top. Let's go into the fall. And yeah. Oh, wow. Okay. I did not expect this happening. So what ends up happening here is because Serbia is tapped and Albania is moving into Adriatic, Trieste cannot be held. And therefore, Turkey goes down 1. Russia's positioned to grow an additional 1 in next season if it goes on to next season off of Serbia. Russia gets Norway, and Germany's fine with it for obvious reasons. Germany picks up Brest, so they stay even despite losing Norway. And this is just a runaway train now, I think, for Jackson. There's no credible threat to him. All the units that could be a problem for him are moving away. Kiel moving to Holland means there is no threat to him for the rest of the game in the north. The lack of ability for Turkey to be a credible threat in the south means there's nothing that can be done to him. Let's go into the spring. And now we see with the move to Skagerrak that Jackson's basically saying, hey, I'm not going to force this issue, Christian, but push come to shove, I can take Denmark when I want to. Mm-hmm. I don't need to now. I don't need to ever, actually, in theory. But if I need to, in order to ensure that I am the lone top, I will do it. And I think this should be obvious to Christian Brown. This should be obvious to everyone that Jackson's going to play nice until he needs to get the sole top. And that means, or a sheer top if Jackson wants that. So we have him forcing the Germans into Mao. We have him blowing up the unit in Gascony. We have Holland taking Belgium. Denmark probably gets past him, honestly, at this point, because Christian Brown is going up 2 potentially here. Turks, once again, the units cannot do anything to the combined Russian-German alliance, and this shows the power of the RG, which in my opinion is one of the most powerful, most underrated alliances in the game, because you just lock down the board in such a way that prevents any retaliation from the rest of the board without it being obvious to the rest of the board.
In a rare moment, I agree with Karthik Connath on that point.
I'm right more than people could give me credit for about tactics. About anything else, people can disagree with me all they want to. But tactics and strategy, I know what I'm talking about. So here, not only does Denmark get taken by agreement, but London presumably does as well. Christian Brown presumably is fine with this because he gets Spain. But what I don't know if it's agreed upon or not is Vienna. Right. This does give Jackson sole possession of the top. And how Christian Brown reacts will tell us the fate of the entire game.
I think they draw.
Moscow and St. Petersburg all get built.
What can Christian do?
What can Christian do at this point?
Oh, they play.
They play. And now here's what gets interesting. Because Turkey takes Trieste. If Christian is willing to swallow his pride and punish Jackson, Jackson can actually lose sole possession in first place. And Christian Brown can top. The question is Christian Brown willing to swallow the loss of Trieste here? Because it seems based off of these moves, he kind of expected, if I was Christian Brown, I'd be saying Serbia should be tapping Budapest here. And therefore, Albania can walk into Trieste, and Trieste can take Vienna. That way, Jackson is going down, Turkey is growing, but Turkey is growing off of Russia, not growing off of me in the net terms, right? But that isn't what happens here. So I want to go to the fall and see what ends up actually happening. And we get something sort of close to that, right? But not perfect. And this is where people like Jackson really tend to excel, right? When less experienced people are on the board, sometimes tactical moves that are expedient and effective at resolving tough negotiations do not happen. So here we have what could be a grand Turkish-German alliance, right? That prevents anything bad from happening. And it does a lot of good, right? Vienna gets blown up. Sevastopol falls. But Sevastopol falls to a fleet in Armenia. And
these are
Romania,
fall 1910 games, just so you know.
Oh, these are fall 1910 games. Never mind. So it doesn't really make a difference.
Right.
But Serbia falls. There was no need for Serbia to fall in theory, right? Like, if this had been worked out slightly better, Germany could be a lone topper.
Yeah.
And Turkey could have been a little bit ahead, and Russia could have been down. But because the negotiations between Christian Brown and Nicholas Lawton were just slightly imperfect, Jackson Roberts is able to eke out a share top in this board. And that's a testament to his play. And also, kudos to Christian Brown for pulling out a share top where I thought Jackson Roberts was going to run away with this board.
Huge kudos to Christian on this board.
Huge kudos to Christian, because this is a massively well-played board by him.
Totally. I have 2 things to say about this board. One is you forgot your first job, which is to call out the players. It's Christian Brown. Thank you for playing. Good top. Milo, thank you for playing. Hope you come back again. Sean Hallisey, same. Mel Neon in Italy. My stalwart Abyssinia, thank you for playing. Roger Yu, thank you for playing. Nicholas Lawton, a great result. And I guess Jackson Roberts did okay. And thing two is that took you 22 minutes, Karthik. So the boasts that Karthik Connacht makes to you when he's drunk in a hotel room in Madrid at 3 a.m, you shouldn't trust. That's what I learned.
That's 30 turns, though. 30 turns times 30 seconds. What? That's 900 seconds.
Anyway, Kevin, let's see the next board. I'll show Karthik how it's done. Don't worry, I'll show him how it's done.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I'm golden. That's perfect. All right.
We have got on round 2 board D Espejo, Jonathan Sun, an Aussie in England, Ben Kelman, whom we know and love in France, Ian Rudnick, common player here on the channel in Italy, Brendan Austin, another Aussie in Austria, Zoe Cameron, another Aussie in Turkey, and she won't be the last, Tim Crosby, I think one time King of England and Russia, and some random Australian player in Germany. Let's see him.
Heart my Australians.
All right. So does anything interesting happen in this spring? Not really. We have the old school opening from Spanner to Con. Zoe, I don't recommend it, but fair enough. And we have either the Zig or the Zag. Who knows which is which from Ben. Otherwise, it's standard stuff. Let's see the fall. We see a very Western Tripoli opening from England. I rarely like to move Norwegian to Barents, but it's definitely a good way to get a huge advantage over Russia early on. No bounce in Sweden, so Peter isn't feeling Tripoli, and Ben says, I'm feeling Tripoli, as in, how about 3 builds for France and no one? And the East is boring. Zoe Cameron takes the black. Tim Crosby picks up his 2. Convoy to Tunis. We got to wait to see what happens over there. So let's see what happens in the winter. 2 fleets from Ben. And Jonathan knows it's coming. Jonathan puts his 1 fleet down in London, so he's probably going to retreat with Barents, and fleet North Coast from Tim Crosby is not going to make Jonathan feel too much happier. And still cagey in the East, so we'll have to wait till the spring. What do we see in spring? We see AI cooperation for sure with the support into Aegean. Tim Crosby's not making up his mind. He's still playing cagey. He's just going to take Norway in the north and let the south play out. And he's probably free to do that because it's FG in the west, another FG. So Jonathan Sun is in trouble here with Peter McNamara and Halligan Bite and Ben Kelman in the channel. In the fall, Jonathan's in more trouble, and in fact, he seems that he might just be already here in O2 abandoning the home island to see if he can carve out survival in Scandinavia, which is something you can do when you're being attacked, but it's pretty committal as he retakes Norway from Tim. Good for Jonathan, but loses north. Now the position is totally lost in the home country. And in the east, we're seeing a little bit of an IT moment here, where Brandon Austin loses Greece to a combined attack from INT, and meanwhile, Austria attacks Russia. So if this is IT, good start. Have your enemies attacking each other. Let's see if it continues next year. Nothing interesting in the builds, really. Fleet for Italy was curious, and we're seeing what that might have entailed here in the spring, which is Zoe thinks it's an IT. Ian? He's not so sure. So Ian makes kind of AI moves. And in the West, it is lights out for Jonathan Sun. Loses Eddie to a convoy, loses Liverpool. Looks like he's working with Tim. I like that from Tim, right? These 2 guys are getting too big too fast. Tim isn't getting the spoils. He needs Jonathan to help him, and he'll get gifted Norway later. All the better. Let's see if that happens here in the fall. Nope. Jonathan says, nope, I still want to stay alive in Scandinavia. I don't care that I'm losing everything at home, and he does lose everything. So London and Eddie both go to Peter. That's 2 builds for Germany. Ben Kelman's got Liverpool. He's not feeling too upset. The interesting question now is, now that England's dead, where Germany can go east, right? Can go up into Scandinavia, but Ben, what's he going to do now? Interesting question. Zoe takes Sev and pops it with a very cute convoy over the black, but loses Serbia in the process. These moves could all be arranged between the three of IAT, but it
Bulgaria,
could be
not Serbia.
Bulgaria from Serbia. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
you're right, Karthik. Yeah. This could be arranged between the three of them. It could also be another AI stab on T. Not sure. Tim's on the outs, though. We know that. We see armies everywhere in FG. So that's an interesting sign. We'll see what it entails in the spring. And it's not conflict. It's caginess, but not conflict in the West so far. The East is reacting, so Austria is moving to the line with some bounces that could be arranged with Peter. It's going to be the end of the road for Jonathan's son as Tim Crosby takes Norway. And in the East, Zoe is getting back into Bulgaria at the cost of Aegean. Let's see where that gets us in the fall, which is the loss of Smyrna for Zoe. So this is Ian seems to be the one winning in the south, right? He's got an army in Greece. That's great for Italy. He's got Smyrna. What does Austria have out of all this mess that's happened? Not much. What does Zoe have? Even less, right? So I'm liking Ian in the east. In the west, I'm liking Ben Kelman. He takes Bulgaria. Oh, no, he's stabbing Peter here by putting Jonathan into Wales. It's okay. It's not a super strong stab. It will be one if Tim Crosby is down to attack Peter from the north. But will Tim be down to do that? Let's find out. Army St. Petersburg tells us nothing. I wouldn't be very happy about Army Naples, though, if I was Brandon, I'll tell you that much. It's about one good convoy location for that, and it starts with an A and ends in an LB. Let's see if he does it. Nope. Nope. Ian's just being cagey, happy for his ally, in whatever quotation marks it deserves, to get Bulgaria. There's still dot trading between everyone who isn't Italy in the east, so I still love it for Ian. And the war in the west goes nowhere, kind of as I expected. It's still going to come down to what Tim wants to do, I think. Let's see in the fall if we get our answer. Nope, more nothing. Taps Norwegian, which is kind of taking Germany's side, but not really because Germany doesn't even go for Liverpool. And in the south, Ian is coming for Ben. So this stab is really not turning out very hot for Ben, unfortunately. In the east, Zoe is going down to 3 centers in Konank and Rum, which is not quite what you're hoping for. It's too bad to see. Let's see what happens here in winter. Another Army St. Petersburg, Tim Crosby's favorite build. Not my favorite build, but it's Tim Crosby's, fair enough. And in the spring, yeah, Zoe's going to lose everything here. Maybe he's going to Janissary for the AI, move up into Sev. Fair enough. There's not a lot you can do. Hard to blame her for that. It's détente between I and F. I like that decision from Ian, at least in the short term. I mean, you're unlikely to get anything quickly off of France. And if you're going to attack France here, what's going to be the effect of that? Is it going to be a really strong Peter McNamara? Probably. Right? So I like Ian saying, nah, I can pick up my builds in the east. I'll keep France in check. I did not misspeak on now versus Norwegian. I would never do something so silly. I probably did. He's gonna get his builds in the east. He's gonna keep France in check, but he's not gonna go attack France. I like it. And Tim is moving units, but not in a way that tells us what he wants to do with them. So this is cagey stuff from Tim in the north. In the fall, Tim takes Eddie. One imagines that was probably not arranged. So Tim is maybe plus Silesia. I think this is Tim deciding against Peter McNamara. That's going to be good for Ben. That might be impacted by what we're seeing here in the east. And what do we see here in the east? We see that Zoe is now down to 1. Poor Zoe, as Ian keeps growing. Brandon's position is finally consolidating, and it looks like it's going to be an heir against both F and G, even though F and G are fighting. So if F and G keep fighting, it could be a good position for an heir. Let's see if they do. We've got the heir builds. That makes sense. And in the spring, we've got the heir moves. So it's Munich for Brandon. He must like that. And Ian really is going for it now. Western, Tunis, Tuscany. Yeah, I like it. Peter's going down. Ben's in trouble. The air is growing. Do you like this decision for the East, Karthik?
I think it was the smartest decision they had available. Like, I don't think there's a way for Russia to go to war against the Austrians and have it resolve in their favor. I think it favors the Italians too much.
Right.
I don't think there's a way for AI to go it alone without the Russians. I think the air is the best way for all three of them to find some resolution here that ensures both Germany and France go down.
Totally agree. I totally agree. And let's see in the fall if that's what happens. Peter takes back Munich, loses Berlin for his trouble. Fair enough. Eddie is lost and popped. So that's curious. Tim's going to get to rebuild at home, and that probably has to do with this forced attack into Galicia that Brandon Austin has made here. Oh, I'm burying the lead. Oh, it's a brutal stab on Brandon Austin by Ian Rudnick. I didn't even see it. All right. This is brilliant timing from Ian Rudnick. This is brilliant. Ian convinces Brandon to do some wimpy stab against Tim Crosby. That's not going to gain him anything, especially when Tim Crosby can just rebuild that Eddie fleet right as an army in Warsaw, and at the same moment sinks the knife in for Trieste and Serbia. I love it. It's a good move. Ian has 2 builds. He can put down a fleet Rome. Ben's not getting anywhere. Huge for Ian. And let's see what he does put down. 2 armies. Cool. That works too. I like it. I like it. And it's a fleet breast for Ben, so Ben's not that concerned about what Ian's doing really either. Well, I guess he couldn't build in Marseille. Let's see what Ben wants to do here. Ben is moving in on Ian. I guess at this point, Ian's the clear board leader, so this is kind of what you got to do. It's hard to see Ben growing, but maybe he finds a way to snake a northern center. Maybe for some reason, Tunis is able to become his. And in the east, Ian's consolidating the position with that convoy into Greece. Brilliant. Tim's pissed about Galicia, so Tim's spending his time moving back into Galicia, and you can see Tim taking Rome here, for example, especially as Tim loses Norway to the Germans. So this position has gone from great to amazing for these Italians. Let's see if that continues in the fall. It does, in a huge way. Brandon Austin is getting shanked. He loses 3 of his 4 remaining centers. So that is night-night Austria. As Bull is popped in favor of the Italians, Vienna is taken by the Italians. Rum is taken by the Russians. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful for the Italians, and even more beautiful, the French are backing off. Because the French saw what I was talking about. They're not going to get any growth off of Ian. They want to win, so they're going to go try to get some more growth in the north. They might be able to do that because Peter's losing Munich, but taking 2 in Scandinavia, so it's kind of dipsy doodle between Germany and Russia in the north. Ben can capitalize if he has time, but there's only a few turns left, and the Italian position is so good, it's difficult to see it being raced. Let's see what happens. It's a fleet for Peter. That makes sense. I like the Italian builds. It all makes sense. And in the spring, Munich is retaken by Peter. So I think Ben has just kind of decided to hold what he's got and play for second place, which does matter in this scoring system. Okay. It's a convoy over Aegean so that Ian will be able to take Ankh. So he's going up even more. He's a nice guy. He puts his buddy Tim into Budapest, but different doesn't make to Ian, none at all. He's got to keep Tim happy. And that's about it in terms of important stuff happening here. In the fall, it's as expected. The only surprise is that Brandon does live in Berlin, so that's fun. Good for Brandon. And Holland does go to Ben here, so Ben is building, and one wonders whether Peter was kind of knew that was going to happen and kind of was figured, what can you do? Yep, those builds make sense. Just 1 year left in this game. And Ian isn't satisfied with what he's got, man. No way. He wants them all. He's going into Lyon. He's taking Budapest. He wants it all, like Freddie Mercury. And he's going to get at least a couple more. So good for Ian. And it looks like it is war between Ben and Peter. And that might be enough to get Ian Marseille. Might be enough to get him the tap he needs. So how many does he get? He does get Marseille because Munich does tap Burgundy, and fair enough to Peter. He does get Budapest. He loses nothing in Turkey. So that's up another 2 for Ian Rudnick and a huge board top, 14 center Italy. You love to see it. Go Ian. You love to see it.
Big fan of Ian. I love when he does well. So, like, I mean, this was a masterful Italy performance. Just look at that line of the Italians after 1905. It's chill and then a vertical.
Yeah.
Like, it is an insane performance. And a lot of the time I say that Italy sort of needs to choose a direction, choose it aggressively, and start getting growth. And I hate sort of the Richard Sharp theory that, oh, Italy can just coast on 5 forever. Well, if you can get to 6, you have the ability to coast for a little bit. And then once you want to put the pedal to the metal, as Ian did in 1906, then you can just go all the way to 14 by the end of 1910. Great played game by Ian Rudnick. That's how you play Italy.
And most importantly, I don't know if you noticed, but we were through that board call in 14 minutes and 20 seconds. So the challenge, the glove has been tossed. Karthik, let's see.
It's
Let's
like
see.
15-19 to me, but like, what do I? There's like an extra 40 seconds for me, and then like an extra 20 seconds after. So like, you know, whatever.
Let's see him.
Please like and subscribe. Stay safe, stab well. All that shenanigans.
All that good stuff.
Let's get this game going. Look at this. These 15 seconds have been added to me. What am I supposed to do with this? So we see a very, very standard.
Hold on. Do you want to call these? Do you want me to call the names? I mean, do you want?
No, I got this.
Okay.
So we got Stitches in Germany doing super normal things. Honestly, the entire West feels like it's straight out of like 1974 with their openings. Jan Clouet goes to Tyrolia, which is always fun. And then in the South, Bradley Gray says, no Lepanto, please. Other than that, very standard. Let's go to the fall. What I want to call attention to is Germany supporting West into Sweden, showing that the Germans and the Russians at least are not instant enemies. I think they see the threat of the Anglo-French alliance here. The Italians, I think, will need to react as well in order to really put some position on it. But otherwise, good responses. Let's go to the spring. Builds. Okay, cool. So we see the anti-English fleet builds, which is what I was most curious about. But instead of Tim Crosby going to the English Channel like I expected, Portugal holds, not even going to Spain's south coast. What's that about? And holds in Portugal. So it's a strong signal to Jan Clouet, hey, do not go to my hair. Please stay south. In the meanwhile, West Ketchum supports himself into Galicia, getting himself in successfully while also taking the Black Sea. West Ketchum is now in the driver's seat. Whatever he wants, he can kind of sort of have. Let's go into the fall. In the fall, we see what I wanted to see the most, which is where English armies go to die in Belgium. Despite the attempt to sort of get into Norway, West Ketchum says no by supporting St. Petersburg in, denying Evan the escape hatch he kind of had planned. He actually successfully forced him out of Belgium. In the south, though, Romania gets forced out due to the Austrians and the Turks working together, getting 2 supports in for Bulgaria to Romania, denying Ukraine supporting Galicia in. Clearly, Jason Bennett did not appreciate the army sneaking into Galicia and decided to punish him heavily for it. Also to note, the Smyrnian army sneaking into Armenia, West Ketchum may have overstretched his hand here.
Astroturk, baby.
Yeah, Astroturk, baby. Gets into Ionian as well. Let's go into the winter. Okay, so now we see the Black Sea Fleet getting disbanded. West Ketchum is begging for forgiveness. I do not think it's enough. In fact, I think he's going to get punished for it. In the north, we also see Brest get built. And finally, we see the anti-English moves that we expected to see from France. Germany supports the Russians into Skagerrak, enabling a strong anti-English position from the FGR. In the south, once again, as I mentioned, the reprieve that West was hoping to get from Turkey, sign of weakness that allows Turkey to fully capitalize. Galicia gets forced, meaning that if Ukraine gets tapped, Sevastopol is guaranteed. This is why I don't like the blow up of Black Sea. And for some of the reasons why I don't like a one fleet Germany, having this here, sign of weakness, ask and get jumped on. Let's go to the fall. And when I said that this is asking to get jumped on, we see that West actually managed to make the most out of it possible. While Turkey continues to attack him hard, there's at least an arrangement that allows Austria to have to question whether or not it's worth going after Russia anymore. Turkey gets Sevastopol, but is in no position to help Austria advance at all. Also, Serbia is now in Romania, which makes Bulgaria an attractive target, while Aegean is extended into Ionian Sea. Now I think would be a great time, if Austria wanted to realign and stab Turkey and try to grow off of that position and reestablish the RA that kind of made the most sense from the beginning. Because West Ketchum is getting Norway off of the English, which gives Russia a strong position to work with, while England collapsed under the French and German pressure. North Sea falls, now gets taken. Not great. Let's go into the winter. So Edinburgh gets rebuilt, great. Budapest gets built, great. But that doesn't change really the facts on the ground that we're seeing here. Let's go to the spring. So, as I mentioned, Norwegian now gets taken. Kava gets outguessed, but the fleet gets into the English Channel. So now we have a fleet in the English Channel and a fleet in Liverpool. This is a really stifling condition to be in for the English. I don't think Evan makes it past 1905. In the meanwhile, we see the Austrians sneak into the Ionian Sea while the Turks get into the Adriatic. This is a completely domineering position for the Astro-Turk, as Yankauer is going to most likely lose Venice in the coming years, guaranteed to lose Tunis if the Austro-Turk wants it. So great position for them. Let's go into the fall. And as I mentioned, Austro-Turk decides to take Tunis with the Turks in the Tyrrhenian Sea taking Tunis. We see the fleet in Apulia getting blown up. That's why I have the one issue with the order set. Giving the Italians the opportunity to rebuild an army, not the smartest thing in the world, but because Tunis is being taken, it kind of ensures it's a moot point. But what we see in the north is what I thought was going to end up happening is the Germans managed to finally get the convoy successfully into Edinburgh, leaving the English with London alone, making the death of the English fait accompli, unless they can diplomatically convince either the French or the Germans to turn them into a janissary. Let's go to the winter. So we have the Germans building Army Kiel. Doesn't tell us much. We have the French building Fleet Marseille. This suggests to me that the French are not going to stop the Germans, but are going to go whole hog against the Italians and go against whole hog against the Austrians and the Turks in the south. Now, I think this is probably a smart move. They need to stop the AT from making it across the line, which I think will probably give the Germans or the Russians the upper hand, whichever one decides to be more aggressive about it, and whichever one decides to be smarter about it. If I had to guess, in the long run, I think West Ketchum comes on top of this board. Let's go to the spring. Now, in the spring, Russia gets into Galicia. This is huge for the RG offensive. The only thing that would have been better is if Galicia got blown up. But Austria recognizes correctly that Romania moves to Serbia, allowing Galicia to retreat to Romania. In the north, Germany has a beautiful convoy into London, saving the entire turn, ensuring basically that the English are dead. Let's move into the fall. Now, in the fall, we see that the Austrians move fully on the Italians, assuming that they were going to be able to get in. Does not happen. But the tap does allow Apulia to slide into Naples with support from Ionian, and the Turks reposition. But Ukraine is able to slide into Romania, but Romania slides into Bulgaria on the free retreat. Once again, everything is coming up all West Ketchum, which is what I mentioned earlier being the most likely case based off positioning. It's a really dangerous position for Germany, Austria, and Turkey to be in, with Russia behind the line, France, Germany, and Austria all up against each other. Like, this is a beautiful position for West Ketchum to be in. Let's move into the winter. So now we have the Germans building Kiel, once again showing deference to the Russians. If I were the Germans here, I'd be putting more aggressive pressure on the Russians, but super wordy, Stitches, very loyal ally. And it's not
Stitches. It's Leonardo S. from Sardinia.
Oh, super wordy. I'm so dumb.
It's superstition. It's a reasonable.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
a reasonable mistake.
Look, it's 2:30 a.m. I'm very drunk in Madrid.
It's a reasonable mistake.
That's my excuse.
It's a good excuse, to be fair.
Yeah, okay, let's move on to the spring. So they repositioned in the north. And so Super Wordy is not a loyal ally. He's a very, very smart, aggressive tactical player. And so he moves in position, I think, to sort of balance powers, the French and the Russians, which is kind of what he has to do if you're not playing an alliance game. If you're playing an alliance game, you have a lot more options. But if you're playing a balance of power game, this is the right play. So the French then move into position to take Tunis, right? So the threat that Bradley Grace once posed does not look as serious as it may have once have been, which allows West Kekman to leave Sebastopol open and say, hey, Bradley, if you're willing to work with me, I'm going to give you the position to operate and move from. And Bradley takes this deal seemingly. And I think it's a good deal to stab Austria here. Let's go into the fall. And we see the dividends this ends up paying, right? We see the fleet move into Sebastopol. We see the Turks take Bulgaria. We see basically the Austrians put in a position where they only have their 3 home centers in Serbia at the end of this year. This is a massive fall from grace from an Austria that was on 7 centers, tied for a board top at the start of this year. In the north, we see Russians losing Norway. We see basically a crumbling of their strategic position because now Super Wordy is in the dominant position. Let's move into the winter. And now we see the army in Berlin, right? This is no longer the calm, hey, appease Russia position, because now they realize that, hey, I'm the dominant position. So long as I say, hey, Russia, I'm not attacking you. I'm just being defensive. There's nothing really the Russians can do about it. And the Turks are now building an aggressive position as well, seemingly to go after the Austrians, but in theory can be repositioned on a dime. The French commit themselves a little bit more heavily with the fleet build in Marseille and the army in Brest. It's going to take a year to reposition if they want to do anything else other than what it obviously telegraphs. Let's go to the spring. And now we see the diplomatic situation that is sort of needs to resolve this all. Kudos to West and Super Wordy for finding a way to resolve this. This involves Sweden voluntarily walking out, Norway voluntarily walking out, and Norwegian walking in. I think this was a smart play by all involved. And then we have Silesia walking to Warsaw. We have Berlin walking to Silesia, probably a trust but verify, allowing the position to walk into Austrian positions if they want to, and to push the attack on Russia if they disobey. But if we wanted to see a really aggressive anti-Russian position, Berlin probably supports Munich to Silesia instead. So I think this sort of shows the friendliness we want to see. Now, the Turks, on the other hand, move in a position to take Serbia, reposition the Albanian fleet into Adriatic. Very, very curious to see what we see here. Let's move on to the fall. And now we sort of see a stalemate position. The Italians realize the danger of this and say, hey, France, let's put position pressure on Turkey. We're not going to allow them to move. And while Tübingen did support hold Rome out of trust but verify, the threat that Ionian could have fallen if Albania had walked to Adriatic is enough to force both units to support to hold. In the north, though, we see a supported attack into Norway. We see Norway get supported into Sweden. And I have no idea if this is by arrangement or by some weird cross stab. But if I had to guess, probably by arrangement. Let's move into the winter. And this is simply a +1, -1 for Germany, Russia, despite all the trading that went involved, which leads me to believe at first that it was arranged. But then you look at the army that got pulled. Romania got pulled instead of Bosnia or Sweden. Something went wrong along the way that wasn't agreed upon. I don't know what it is. I'd love to see either West or Super Wordy chime in on what it was. But clearly, West is not happy about it. And we see the diplomatic response as is. Let's go into the spring. And we have a draw. People agree that, hey, position is likely not to get better for either of us if we're not named France or Germany here. So let's just stop while we're not too far behind. Let's end the game.
Would you take this draw as every power on this board?
Italy, yes. Austria, yes. Turkey, no. Russia, yes.
F and G?
Round 4, if it was enough to make the top board, yes. Otherwise, no.
My position too. Yep. I got to admit, Karthik, that one was well done. I wish I wish I could give you shit, but that was well done. Let's see another one. Let's keep them coming, Kevin. All right, here we have round 4, board D, Urdaneta. On this board, we have Ian Rudnick, our stalwart Italy, playing Germany now. Christian Brown in England. Some guy named Brandon in France. Micah Blom, the People's Hero. I've never heard of him before. The People's Hero, Micah Blom, is playing Italy. Caleb Wone had a really good game this tournament in Turkey. Is now playing Austria. Darcy Morris, an Aussie who played seemingly every game at the worst possible time for him that he could, for reasons unknown, in this tournament. He's playing Russia. And Jonathan Frank is in Turkey, an old familiar face. So let's see how they do. 1901, what's interesting? Micah opens immediately into Trieste. Micah's definitely the kind of player to do a Trieste for Aegean loan. See if that happens here. Jonathan does the old school opening into Con. That doesn't surprise me from a player like Jonathan Frank. And Brandon Fogel does a kind of curious open, holding Marseille, Paris to Picardy. You see this sometimes. It's okay, I guess. It's a little cagey. You're going for 3 builds without pissing anybody off is really what this says.
Bad opening by a bad player, in my opinion.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens for Brandon. But,
yeah, he'll be eliminated quick, I think. Look at this. This is ridiculous.
Ridiculous.
This French play is terrible. I've never seen a worse French play. No, I like this actually.
Yeah, it's actually pretty good.
Yeah, Brandon is saying, I don't need 3 builds. I don't need to be the center of attention, especially with a name like mine. Why don't I give the 3rd build to my friend Ian Rudnick? He can build 3, he can do what he likes with them, and then we can go be allies. Christian is clearly super down to do a Western triple. Ian is down to get the 3 builds that Germany gets in a Western triple, but he doesn't bounce Sweden. Ian could still do a Western triple, or he could do an FG. So either way, Brandon's happy, Ian's happy. Christian, what do we see in the East? We do see the classic Trieste loan, very good. And this is a masterclass in why you don't open this way as Turkey. Because Jonathan Frank knows that AI is coming, and you can't blame Jonathan for this, right? This was the way every Turkey opened for like 40 years of this game or something. But it's wrong, because if AI are coming and you have to reposition to counter them, you have to do this, which puts the army in Smyrna, which makes it impossible to build Fleet Smyrna. Darcy Morris is well aware of this. He says AI is coming for Turkey and they can't be beaten. So what am I going to do if I'm Darcy? Just going to hop into the Black Sea. I'm going to join the party. Why shouldn't I? Right? That's exactly what he does. And let's see what they build. Norwegian to Barents only happens when I am reading, and they do it to spite me personally because I don't like it. Actually, you want to know the reason I don't like it? The first virtual face-to-face game I ever played, I didn't know what I was doing. I rolled England. I opened this way because I didn't see anything else to do. Jason Massbaum played France, and he took all my centers by 1903. I'll never forget it. So I have a personal vendetta against this English opening.
Losing to Jason Massbaum was kind of embarrassing. You should honestly quit the hobby after that.
I got Massbaum to my first game. Can you believe that?
Embarrassing.
So these builds are interesting in the West, right? Brandon's happy to do the triple thing. Ian, this is the triple build, probably. Not so from Christian Brown. Christian Brown builds Fleet London, which is saying he can still maybe do a triple from here, but definitely Christian Brown is saying, I don't know about the 2 of you. And that makes sense. Jonathan Frank puts an army down in Ankara. That's a diplomatic play, right? I don't know who for, because if I'm Austria or Italy here, I probably want to see a fleet to have him force the black if we're going to work together. Maybe it's for Italy to say, like, if we work together, we were good from now till the end of time. And what do we see? We see Turkey going down. That's kind of what we expected. In the West, we see Tripoli stuff from Germany, Tripoli stuff from England. Brandon says, I'm going to do nothing, and I'm France, and I can do that, and let's see what happens. And in the fall, does anything happen on that front? Mr. O'Kelly? I could keep talking about these moves. We have a Dipsy Doodle in the north. Sweden makes it into Norway. St. Petersburg makes it into Finland. Conjures up an interesting little guess. Karthik, did you kill Kevin? Is that what's happening here?
Yeah, I imagine the moves here.
You let him out. You let him out.
Let him out.
And what happens in the guess in the north is that England is popped. Honestly, Christian's probably happy about that, given the way things have gone. Darcy loses Sweden, but keeps St. Petersburg. All told, it's a wash. Darcy does lose Warsaw, so this is a good turn for Germany from the Western Triple perspective. But Germany says, okay, France, even though you're not doing anything for the Triple at all, nor are you doing any FG things, I'm still going to give you Belgium. It's a really good deal if your name is Brandon Fogel. And it's an army for Micah, so Micah doesn't know what the alliance structure is, but she doesn't think she needs a fleet. Fair enough. Let's see what happens. Micah maybe needed a fleet because Brandon is coming. He's coming all the way in. Fleet Leon, Fleet Western Med, Fleet Nap. This is terrible for a 3-army Italy.
Right.
So Micah's going to be really on the defensive now, and she's maybe regretting that build of Army Venice.
Like Micah did not need the fleets to deal with the East, but unfortunately, Brandon's in France, and you kind of need to deal with him at some point if you don't think Brandon's going after Christian Brown.
Exactly. And Brandon's not going after Christian Brown. Brandon is going to let Christian and Ian go fight Darcy in the north. Ian loses Warsaw, which is to be expected. You can't really hope to hold that unless you have a much stronger German position than this. Jonathan Frank's holding out in Turkey for now. Let's see if he holds out in the fall. He does. Caleb has made it into Ionian, so that's always fun if you're an Austrian player in the Ionian. Micah is really doesn't have much left she can do. She loses Tunis. She couldn't hold it. Loses Tyrrhenian. This is a rough Italian position. And Brandon in his magnanimity sees fit to give back Ian Belgium. I think that's a good move. Otherwise, I think Ian would be disbanding. Brandon says, I'm good. I don't need more units. I'm in a perfectly great position. I'm growing in the south. Ian, go ahead and have one. So it's still kind of a triple by default, but it's not one that's making a lot of progress. Let's see if it holds. Well, 2 builds from Russia, but I think they were pops. In the spring, not much is happening. It's positioning. AI and R are together against the triple. The triple is going to get St. Petersburg, but I don't know that they're going to get much else. Who's going to break? Does Jonathan Frank get into Sevastopol? Let's find out in the fall. No Sevastopol for Jonathan, unfortunately. The AIR rather. They're gaining position in the stalemate line fight, but it's pretty grindy. Brandon's giving up on advancing further east, right? He's looking at Army Piedmont, Army Tuscany, Army Rome, Fleet Naples, and saying that looks difficult to crack through. And that makes a certain amount of sense for Brandon. I think Caleb has an interesting stab on Italy now, maybe should he choose to take it. And there's a build for Christian in St. Petersburg. Let's see what he does with it. Fleet Liverpool. Okay. So that's what we call stabbing in the builds phase. Now maybe NAO was already a stab. If so, boy, it's not a very strong one. On the other hand, Brandon is pretty far out of position. So maybe he can make something happen here. It's an interesting move from Christian. And Ian doesn't punish him for it. Ian's putting down the army. So let's see what happens here in the West. This is interesting. It is war against Brandon. It is definitely war against Brandon. Whose side is Ian taking? Well, he's bouncing. Are you cheering for war against Brandon as just a general concept? Yeah, it's hard to argue. Ian is bouncing North Sea, but that could well be arranged as an EG move. It's kind of inefficient, but it could be like a trust but verify for Ian. Ian's also tapping Burgundy. Burgundy was trying to help Austria attack Germany, so this does look like an EG setup. And meanwhile, the heir is still making gains on the line. So, interesting. In the fall, what do we see? We see Christian give up and turn around. Christian says, never mind, I didn't want to do that. I never wanted to attack you, Brandon. He had a point that he was never going to get anywhere, and AR wasn't going to let up and let Germany help him. So I think Christian's right, although the way this went down didn't do him much good as he loses St. Petersburg for his troubles. Micah loses Trieste. kind of arranged-ish, maybe, I think. I don't know. Hard to tell. The winter may give us some clues. She's taking off Piedmont. That's probably what you'd take off here. Fleet Sev makes sense. They're finally going to kill Jonathan Frank, who's been fighting for his life since the beginning of the game, and valiantly at that. Let's see what happens in the west. Brandon makes it into the channel because he doesn't trust Christian Brown anymore, because why would he? And I think that this really is an Austrian attack on Italy. No. Both Venice and Marseille want Tyrolia and Piedmont. The France thinks this is an Austrian attack on Italy. Italy thinks that this is Austria helping against France. And Caleb probably thinks he can go whichever way he chooses in the fall. So it's a great set of moves for Caleb. And in the west, nothing interesting happens. In the fall, Jonathan stays on his 2. That's nice. It looks like it is a Caleb stab, and he's stabbing everyone. He's going to stab for Venice against Italy. He's going to stab for Romania and Galicia against Russia. I rarely like to stab 2 alliance partners at the same time. One has to wonder who Caleb is hoping his next alliance partner will be. On the other hand, it's a good Austrian position, so you can't be too mad at it. What's happening in the west is that Ian is going down hard. He loses Belgium. He loses Holland. So after many years of griping and grousing who wins in the west, it's looking like it might be Brandon, and whoever it is, it's not Ian. 1907 might give us some new clues. Not much in the builds. Maybe in the moves. Yep. The AR war is on, and I think Caleb should have thought about whether his actions might result in the RT that we are in fact seeing. That's not good for Caleb. And it's continued bad news for Ian with French armies in Rome. That fleet in Holland for England retreats to Heligoland, which is hardly any better for Ian. I think it's still advantage Brandon.
Yeah, that's not good for Caleb as an understatement of the century. You had 4 units that were doing nothing and locked against each other, and your stab of everyone suddenly made all of them useful again.
Yeah.
Timing such that one of them was operative would have solved all these issues.
I agree. I actually think the stab on Italy was good. I think it was a perfectly good
100%.
stab. I think the stab on Russia was ill-conceived.
Right.
But let's see if fate proves us right. There's Kiel for France, so that's pretty good. Christian gets Holland back with an army, so it's really just kind of classic EF stuff at this point. Took him a while to get there, but that's fair. Brandon Fogel is in the Ionian Sea because Caleb Wone has units everywhere and nothing to support them. So the interesting question is, what does the RT do? Because this army in Ukraine is actually going to stall RT army progress for a little while.
I think there's an easy answer. Unfortunately, it's really bad for the Turks. Get the fleet into Romania and then get Austria to fuck off and take Bulgaria. Very easy way to resolve it.
I totally agree. Let's see if they do it. Sorta.
What is Austria doing? Russia did what's right.
Yeah.
Ionian?
I do think that Russia did the moves, and Austria was supposed to tap Aegean and take Bulgaria here.
Yeah.
Instead, Austria thought that they got Turkey on side for something, and Brandon Fogel said, "I'll be in Adriatic. That'd be fun." And I think it will be fun. He'll also be in Denmark with an army because that's fun for France. When isn't it? In the fall, Jonathan Frank takes back Ankara. Good for him. Darcy Morris loses Rum, as all sense of alliance structure in the East has just fallen down completely by this point. Nobody even knows what the word alliance means anymore. Brandon trades Denmark for Munich, which is a better... Oh, no. Oh, Christian has again stabbed Brandon here. Takes Belgium, takes Denmark. It's again not a great stab, but I do think it's better than it was last time, at least.
Yeah, at least you get English Channel force here, no matter what Brandon could do. So,
and I think Christian builds 3 in Sweden, Denmark, and Belgium. So maybe we should have been watching for that stab. That actually looks pretty good. I like it. And Brandon's really out of position. Here.
I'd have built an army in Edinburgh maybe, but I'm not bad.
Maybe he can force the channel, right? And he can probably get to Mao before Brandon can take friggin' Fleet Apulia back to do any good. Yeah. Good for Christian. We didn't even see it. Yeah, it looks great.
Looks good to me.
Let's see how he finishes it out. He loses Belgium, but that's not a big problem. He can get it back later. He's going to get the Mid-Atlantic Ocean here, I think. He's in Baltic. In great places. He's going to get Munich. And in the East, does anybody do anything? Short answer is no. No, they don't. So it's
yeah.
in the West.
Donnie, I want to call attention to one thing here is that the support for Kiel supporting Holland to Ruhr. I think that's the most important move of this turn. It's showing that Christian Brown got Ian as a supporter for now against Brandon.
Right.
That diplomatic victory, I think, is what's going to determine the fate of the West.
Yeah, it's huge. It's huge, right? In fact, Ian might get Munich back here, so that makes sense for Ian to make that deal. Nope. No.
Like,
That's not what's going to happen here.
No,
we forgot we were talking about Christian Brown. No. Christian Brown's going to take Kiel. Christian Brown's going to take Kiel. He doesn't know what the Mid-Atlantic Ocean is. All he knows is C. Take. And meanwhile, Brandon and Caleb make the sensible move to collaborate to kill the People's Champion Micah, which is never what you want to do. But actually, it was a good move here. So Brandon's building 2 for Belgium and Naples. And now Christian Stab has been neutralized completely.
Yeah,
so,
I'm team Micah all the way, but I think it probably was the right move. The one disappointment is, I think, not pressing the attack on Brandon more. I think there was a chance to take Kiel whenever you wanted to, but there was also a chance to take Brest if you had forced Mid-Atlantic Ocean.
I couldn't agree more. I think this was misplayed from Christian. It's still a good position, though. I mean, England's still liable to top the board. Yeah, totally.
But just like 10 or 20 points short of what it could have been.
Let's see what's going to happen in the final year. Christian retakes Belgium. That's nice. He loses the channel. It's going to be guessy around there. He gets Berlin 2, which is good. And fortunately, he retreated into north, so we can cover Norway. So the English victory is probably still alive here.
Yeah.
The
Blowing
East
up
is
Belgium was
holding.
huge.
Yeah.
Belgium being blown up was the biggest move, I think.
Yep. Yeah, I think Christian's he's gonna snake it. Let's find out. He doesn't keep Belgium, but actually, this is big for Christian. Tarulia supports Silesia to Munich. So the rest of the board says Brandon. We don't want it to be you. Brandon does still get Rome, which he was able to force. So that's good. But I think, maybe they tied. Yeah, they tied. Yeah.
If Christian had focused more on Brandon, I think he gets a lone top. Unfortunately, Christian has to settle for a share, which is so unfortunate because Christian played a great game, I think, up until that point. And so kudos to Christian for playing that great game.
Right.
But when you have the chance to put the screws on a dominant player like Brandon and seize the win for yourself, you need to keep the screws on tight, take the Mid-Atlantic Ocean, force Brest, take Kiel when you know you can get it later, and win that game.
I do want to point out, Caleb Wone surprises us both. Strong second place with 8 centers. I didn't think he was going to do that well. Did you?
Kudos to him. I thought Austria was in deep trouble when they overextended. So massive props.
Well played, Caleb Wone. Yeah, totally.
Diplomatic victory by him, and that's what the game is all about.
That's right. All right, one more. You want to give it to us, Karthik?
Sure, let's do it. Okay. Oh, my boy Jordan Connors, my boy Conk, incredible England player, and he tossed Cody Green into doing exactly what he shouldn't. Somehow Kiel goes to Holland, making pressure on the French, but abandoning any chance of putting any pressure on Sweden.
Right.
At the same time, Munich goes to Burgundy while there's a Maginot opening going against him. Very, very curious to see what's happening there. At the same time, Venice makes it into Tyrolia. Normally, not a big deal because why does that ever matter? But now, because of the opening we see from Cody, maybe Munich's under pressure with French support or vice versa. We see a bouncing Galicia and the Sunstrom opening from the south. So very, very fun, dynamic spring, which we have not seen at all this tournament, really. Yep. And the dynamism continues. Romania falls in 1901 to the AT. Greece gets taken without opposition. But at the same time, Tyrolia moves to Bohemia and Apulia moves to Venice. Very crafty, very creative. And also, I want to point out, France, as I suspected, did support Tyrolia to Munich, but Tyrolia doesn't take it.
Yeah.
But more mind-blowing here. England convoys to Denmark successfully. Bonkers. Kiel goes to Holland, though, and Holland goes to Belgium also successfully. This is one of these board games that feels like you're on web diplomacy in 2010 when people are doing whatever the fuck they feel like. People don't subscribe to any meta. There are no articles infiltrating their thinking. This is pure diplomacy. Whatever people feel like doing on the board, I love it.
Do you think this might have been agreed between EG?
God only knows.
I think maybe.
Maybe. Let's see the
find out.
spring. Oh. Army build? Maybe.
Right.
But double army build from the Germans. So I think probably agreed.
Belgium's a walk into the channel.
Yeah.
Just cede Scandinavia to England and you go take all of France. It's kind of cool.
Yeah. No, this is a sick opening. I kind of hope it gets played more often.
Yeah. Well, let's see what happens.
Yeah. Oh, that's gnarly. All right, so the Austrians snake the Italians potentially here, unless this is by agreement to move Trieste onwards. The Austrians also move into the Ionian Sea, and the reason why I don't think this is by consent, or this is not like a non-Austrian stab, is I think Bradley would have taken Bulgaria or done something to that effect if it had been AI sticking together. But to me, this reads as Bradley choosing Turkey over Greece to nasty effect.
Yep.
Turkey also takes Sevastopol with the army. This is going to be a massively interesting race between Conk/Jordan, by agreement, and versus the AT in the south. Other players on the board, I think Jordan is the best of them all. So if I had to guess, Jordan wins this race. Let's go on to the fall. So yeah, this has been a hugely, supremely interesting game so far, and it gets only more interesting. England takes London, maybe by agreement. Who knows?
You can't imagine.
London takes Holland. Who knows? Sweden walks out into Denmark. Denmark goes into Kiel. What's support? Now, obviously, it's not actually by agreement, but it's funny as hell.
Yeah.
By agreement. No, French support themselves into Belgium. The Germans block that, but do not defend themselves otherwise. The Turks manage to keep Sevastopol, but do not get Ukraine successfully. The Wintergreen kind of realizes how serious the AT threat is and try to come together, but it's probably too little too late. AT makes the right moves to stall Italy out, and I think with Italy going down one, it's just a matter of time. But once again, Jordan Connors is the best player on this board, and I think with his dominant position, I don't see anyone catching him. Let's keep going. And the German fleet in London gets popped, so England can retake whenever they want to. Let's keep going. And so we see the English take the Baltic Sea in spring 1903. That's
wow.
We see the English in the north. We see the English in hell. We see the English support the French into Belgium. We see the Germans support themselves into Burgundy. We see the English walk into Munich. England is now, for all intents and purposes, EG on their own.
Right.
It is an insane position. And at the same time, this EG operating as England solo has Russia on side, operating against an AT, meaning that Russia has no options, nowhere else, no ability to turn on England ever. And which means
has France on side too.
Has France on side too for the meanwhile, which means one of the two will get turned into a dot farm, most likely. If, in my opinion, France is the better dot farm right now, and England should lock up Munich and Berlin and form a stalemate line segment around Munich, Silesia, Warsaw, Livonia, Prussia, with Russian assistance. Jordan can tell Arsch all the moves that are necessary to make this happen. And I just don't see how AC comes back from this.
Yep.
Let's keep going to the fall. Yeah, unfortunately, I'm spending a lot of time commentating this because
No,
these
it's
are
worth it.
extremely interesting moves in
Yeah, it's worth it.
position that you never see. So we see the French making the correct defense to some degree against the Germans until France makes this move. The French support themselves into Burgundy, right? Which you think obviously have to do. They obviously have to do. They need to kick the Germans out of Burgundy if they want to defend their homeland. Unfortunately for them, this means allowing Gascony to be slipped into on the retreat. And mismanaging retreats is so dangerous unless you seek Tunis.
And Belgium.
Tunis and seeking Belgium allows this not to matter for Jonathan Sun at all. Because with the fleet in West, with the 2 new builds, you can block off Brest and Marseille from retreats, you can blow up the unit in Gascony, and with Cody Green completely collapsing, there's no threat at all. Kudos to Jonathan Sun for not overreacting like a lot of France's do in this situation and playing the perfect moves on how to handle it. In the East, we see them taking the position that they need to on Russia to try and advance. But once again, as I mentioned earlier, with how the West is playing, it's too little too late. They get the forward retreat off of Ionian Sea, being able to get into Apulia, which is, once again, a great move by Jason Gray and Bradley Grace, knowing that whatever Italy did, the forward retreat would allow them to make the right move in response. But the tactical moves, like, elsewhere in the tempo that exists already, means that they are playing so far from behind. Let's move on. And now Austria will get a build. They have some of the position resolved, and they'll have to storm the line. But with England having the position on Berlin and France working with them and building 2 more fleets, unless those fleets are anti-Jordan Connors.
Yeah, you sure? Check out Fleet St. Pete North Coast too.
I mean, the combo to Norway is there. Sweden can be taken.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's what I'm saying. Unless Jonathan Sun turns against England, England's great. If Jonathan Sun turns against England, then it's all over. It all hinges on this. So let's see what happens here. And if this was SB Nation Rewind, this is where we say, welcome to a moment in history where Jordan Connors takes a dominant position. We see Gascony get blown up. We see the moves sort of stagnate here for Jonathan Sun. We see Russia opt to reposition in the north, which only gives Jordan Connors more time to react. We see Berlin fall. We see the moves around Munich to reposition, to hold the line against most credible threats. All that is really needed to happen here is for one more army to slide into Kiel, and it's all locked up. And at the same time, there are the units necessary to hold Norway now indefinitely against most realistic attacks, unless something sweet swings into Finland. But how much can you trust Turkey and Austria here? I don't trust them as far as I can throw them. Let's move to the fall. Oh, this is a beautiful trade by Jordan Connors. So Jordan sacrifices Norway in order to take both Sweden and St. Petersburg, knowing that at any point in time he can take Norway back from Russia. At the same time, did he not get into Berlin last turn?
No, he didn't.
Oh, then I take back some of the praise I gave for him. That was stoppable, I guess. But so yeah, kudos to Russia and Austria doing what was necessary to stop it. But at the same time, there's no way for them to ever get into Munich. So that position will be locked, and Jordan will be 2 centers ahead of whatever they can do if he retakes Norway. So I'm curious to see how this ends up resolving. Let's go to 1905. Yeah, so the fleet in Norway gets piffed. I think it's a clear sign from Arsch what Arsch wants to see happen. I think the German units doing what they're doing is a clear sign from Germany on what Germany wants to see happen. unless Austria is willing to stab Turkey and Turkey is willing to let it happen, or vice versa, there's no way for England to fall behind and lose the board top, given what is likely to happen with Edinburgh retaking London, Norwegian taking Norway, with the units that everyone sort of agreed to let happen here. And we see the repositioning happening here. We see the army get comboed to Norway. We see St. Petersburg slide down into Livonia to support Moscow. North Sea is almost certainly taking London, while the French move in their positions to lock up AT. England will be on 10. Austria will be on 9. The question is, does Bradley Grace have what it takes to risk it? Does he need to risk it? I'm not aware of what the standings are at this point, but if we're treating this as a board top winner takes all type deal, that's the question that we would have. If that doesn't matter, then I think we're hurtling towards a draw.
I think Jason stabs Turkey here if he really wants to top the board, right?
Well, yes, but at that point, I think Jason says, screw it, England, let's get you the win. And there's nothing much that Turkey can do about that.
Yeah, sure.
And for the time being, Jordan says, screw it, I don't need the board top. I'm getting Berlin. And let's Russia keep what Russia wants to keep. So interesting diplomatic play there. Turkey walks out of Greece. Also very, very interesting and worth calling no to. So diplomacy is clearly still working on this board. People on this board have things that they want to play for. France walks into Holland, though, and which means that England is not going up by 2, but only going up by 1, which is enough to tie them for first, but not put them into out. Let's move into the winter. So as we see, we have Austria and England tied. We have France on 8, Turkey on 5, and Russia on 3. Do we draw here, Johnny?
No, because Conk can get the solo top here, and he should.
Right. And we see the moves that are necessary to make that happen here with a convoy to Norway. But at the same time, we see Holland move into Kiel. Does this mean that London is going to take Holland from behind or something like that?
Yeah,
possibly.
I think so. It's to set the line.
Let's move on to the fall.
Wow, good guy Jordan Connors. All right.
Not only that, I think he's giving away the sole top to Austria.
Yeah, he sure is. Well, might not draw.
Oh, no. France gets to share a top with Austria. Jordan Connors, I think based off his pride boards, already has enough to make the top board. So maybe he was like, let me make friends with Jonathan. Let me make friends with whoever. So
he proved he could have 17 if he wanted them, and then said, everyone says I can have 17. I don't need to take them.
Right.
Which is a thing you can do. And that's actually not our top 7. That might have been our top 7 going in. That is our top 7. So, no, that's still not actually. That's some top 7 that existed at some point during the tournament. But that's okay. Closer. Yes, there's our top 7. There you go. Read them and weep, Karthik.
I love it.
I'm going to close out this broadcast, if you don't mind, with a quick reading of the awards for the VDC 2025. We had a handful of them. There's your best countries. So that's I'm trying to figure out how many. Oh, I actually have it. I have it written down. That's a 15 center Austria for Ben Kelman. That's best Austria. A 9 center England for Captain Gaming. Best England. England had a bad tournament, but Captain Gaming made the best of it. 17 centers for Jamal Blakarli, and in case you're wondering, 4 of them were east of the stalemate line, so that was a classic Jamal choosing to take the 17 when the 18 were there. Jason Gray, who's on the top board, gets best Germany with 12 centers. Noam Brown also on the top board. 15 center Italy. Russia is shared between Jason Bennett and Bradley Grace with 11 centers. And Turkey with 9 centers. The best was Nicholas Lawton, and Noam Brown shared him, I guess. So congrats to all of them. We had some custom awards as well, which I will post later on in the Discord, but I'll read them now as well. Golden Blade, the best stab of the tournament, goes to Katie Gray. Now, you might have thought I went to Jamal Bukarli for the time that he stabbed for a 5-center stab on the France game, but no. See, it goes to Katie because she did a spring stab. This was round 1, board C. She did a spring stab for 3 dots and beautiful position. She's looking at a clear 17 centers by like 1907. Beautiful. And so that was the stab, which she did on Micah. But then she stabbed me and the rest of the board by holding all the units and not following through on the stab. So it's a double stab. And then it's a triple stab because on the strength of that result, even though she didn't fall through with the stab, she's going to be playing on the top board because Kant can't make it. So it's the rare triple stab from Katie Gray, and it's easily the Golden Blade.
I agree with that 100%. I think more attention needs to be called to the fact that Katie stabs quite frequently, and people ignore that because she's so nice and friendly and lovable. But deep down, she's not a Lions player. She's a stabber and a vampire.
That's right. That's right.
So beware of Katie Gray whenever you play with her.
Unstoppable and Immovable goes to Wes Ketchum for 3 survivals with something like a 70-point spread between them. So he found his niche and he stuck to it this tournament. Best in Class award goes to Chris Kelly because he was the first person to figure out the name of the top board based on the names of the prelim boards. That name is Simon Bolivar for those interested. So congrats to Chris Kelly. Icarus goes to our intrepid co-TD to be, or who would have been, Justin Lohr on round 2, board C, who was a France. He was looking great, tied for the top, Munich, London. He was eliminated like 2 or 3 years later, which happens to the best of us. But Justin, we are thinking of you out there in Los Angeles. That link that you see on that side, you can scan that to donate to LA firefighters. We're also thinking of all the other LA players and all of the other people down there at this time. So shout out to Justin, also to Jason Massbaum. Shout out to him too. The Lazarus Award goes to an absolutely brilliant performance by Jonathan Sun on round 3, board B. He disbanded as Austria in 1901. He was down to 2 units, and he finished the game in 2nd place on like 9 units. Stunning recovery. You never see it from Austria of all countries. So brilliant Lazarus Award to Jonathan Sun. Remember, the Alamo goes to a newer player, Boyan, on round 3, board A, who refused to die against a concerted EG attack for many, many years. And when he finally was taken down, he took down EG with him and led up like a 16-16 to AI. So super impressive from Boyan. And lastly, we have the Barrel of Monkeys Award, which is supposed to be awarded to a board of players who did such ridiculous shenanigans that I felt the need to collectively chastise them all. But instead, we had one player who, across all of the boards that he played, engaged in so much shenanigans that he overdid any shenanigans that one individual board might have done. And that was, of course, Jamal Bukarli, who got 3 builds as France in 1901 and waited for them all in one game. In another game, it developed the opening, the Italian antipasto, where Venice goes to Apulia, Rome goes to Apulia, and Naples goes to Apulia. And guess what? He didn't get eliminated. He got like 7 centers in that game. So, Jamal, you are my barrel of monkeys. You alone, you and all your different boards constitute all the different monkeys.
We support Australian silliness. Let's go.
And at the end of the day, he made it to the top board. So I guess we should all play more like Jamal. That's it for us tonight. It's 4 a.m. Karthik's drunk in Madrid. Good night. Stay safe and stab well, my friends.